Good morning for all of you. So today we are having the sixth lecture of data visualization and management course module. So today we are going to talk about rules of thumbs. So if you have any questions, so you can ask me through the LMS chat, and also as I told you earlier, you also can open a student forum, and also any other option you can reach out to me so that I can provide answers for your questions as well. So let's go through today's lineup would be rules of thumbs. So here what you all have to know is guidelines and considerations and not absolute rules. So these are actually these are we called it as guidelines, and also these are kind of few things which we have to consider while we are doing our visualizations and also designing our visuals. So these are not actually absolute rules, but it's better to follow up these factors. I mean, it's better to follow up these rules so that you may have kind of a very good visualizations, rather than if we are doing any other visualizations without following these ones. So here are a few things which we have to consider when to use three-dimensional charts or visuals, and also when to use two-dimensional charts or visuals, and also when to use eyes instead of memory, and also when does immersions help, and when to use overviews, and how long is it too long, and which comes first, form or functions. These are kind of few things which we have to consider while we are doing our visualizations. So here you can have kind of an comparison. So in the exam also, maybe sometimes you will be given chart or any other visualization. You may have to ask, or you may have to comment on these ones with your ideas, whether this visualization is good, and whether we can get all the data, we can read all the data, and also those wise it's maybe kind of a subjective question, but you may have to, maybe sometimes I'm not agree with your answers, but anyway, since those questions are kind of subjective questions, it's your thought, it's your opinion about the given visualization, so that you have to comment on those visualizations um, in the given question in the at the examination, in semester examination as well. So here we have the pie charts at the right side of the slide, and left side it's kind of a prism. So yeah, so likewise, anyway, we have to like the same chart, actually not the it's not the same chart, but two types of visualizations which we can use. So first one is kind of a 3D triangles, and second one is kind of a pie charts. So it's also pie chart. Okay, so depth versus power of the plane. Maybe sometimes these are kind of high ranked spatial position channels. So while we are doing our visualizations, planar spatial position, it's not just depth. So we have to consider these ones. So last week also, in the lecture number 5, we discussed about the channels and attributes. So when it comes to channels, so anyway, we have to consider about the magnitude, විශාලත්වය ගැන සලකා බලන්න ඕනේ. And also when it comes to attributes, we have to consider about the ordered attributes. මොන හරි rank තියනවා නම් පොඩි එකේ ඉඳන් ලොකු එකටද ලොකු එකට ලොකු size එකක් අපි represent කරනවාද ඔය කියන හැම කරුණු කාරණාවක්ම we have to consider while we are doing these visualizations. So position on common scale, position on unaligned scale, length, tilt, angle, area, depth. These are kind of few things which we have to consider while we are doing our visualizations. Actually, for the two-dimensional charts and also for the three-dimensional charts, anyway, we have to consider these ones. So here you can see another example. So the lengths, areas, depth. This is also this is also kind of an chart, so you can do kind of an comparison about these ones. So this chart is drawn with the intensity versus sensation. So here for these ones also you can comment on these ones whether these are actual values, whether these are correct. Likewise you can comment on yourself. So no unjustified 3D danger on depth. Maybe sometimes, so when it comes to three dimensional, as you all know, if it is kind of a 3D nang, you, for example, we have the cube. Ganakayak, ganakabayak, likewise, මොකක් ඝන වස්තුවක් නම්. It's not a shape actually. There will be another third dimension which you have to consider. Anyway, for the volume, it will be like three-dimensional one. So here, maybe sometimes අපි depth එක ගැන consider කරලා මොන හරි charts and all අඳිනවා නම් සමහරක් වෙලාවට අපිට වැරදි අර්ථකථන එහෙම නැත්නම් වැරදි නිරූපණයන් වලට වැරදි නිරූපණයන් වලට අපිට පෙළඹෙන්න වෙයි. So we don't really live in three dimensional, we see in 2.05 dimensional. අපිට ගොඩක් වෙලාවට access කරන්න පුළුවන් two dimensional ඒවා. අපි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට use කරන්නත් ඕනේ two dimensional ඒවා. මොකද පැහැදිලිව අපිට data read කරන්න පුළුවන් two dimensional ඒවායි. But if maybe sometimes we have to use kind of 3D one. So on that cases anyway, we have to use three-dimensional one. So here acquire more info on image plane quickly from eye movements. Acquire more information for depth slower from head or body motions as well. So these are kind of few things which we are not using much 3D dimensions, but we see only two-dimensional ones. I can අපි 3D තමයි හැබැයි අපිට පේන්නේ 2D වගේ ඒවා විදිහට. Likewise. So if we move a little bit to the next slide, occlusion hides information. So here when it comes to occlusions, අපි occlusions කියලා කියන්නේ මොන හරි අවහිර වෙනවා කියලා කියන එක. So as you all know, as you all seen before, this is kind of a network graph. මේකට අපි කියන්නේ network graph එකක් කියලා. So ඉතින් මේ network graph එක ගත්තොත් මෙහෙම ඇන්දට මේ network graph එකේ we can't define, we can't see any other information, or else we can't derive any inferences. අපිට කිසිම මුකුත් fact එකක් interpretation එකක් කරන්න විදිහක් නැහැ by this given by this given network graph. මොකද අපිට කිසිම දෙයක් පැහැදිලිව පේන්නේ නැති නිසා. So maybe sometimes occlusion hides good information, not only good information actually. Occlusion hides information. So interaction can resolve, but at cost of time and cognitive loads. So here I have mentioned where I took these images as well. And also another drawback may be perceptive distortion loses information. So maybe sometimes to lose information, this perceptive distortion also might helpful. So it might be a cause to lose this information as well. Perceptive distortion. So these kind of perceptive distortions interferes with all size channel encodings. Power of the plane is lost. Maybe sometimes the power of the plane also lost. So visualizing the results of multimedia. So this also where here I have mentioned where I took these images. So perceptive, when it comes to perceptive distortion, sometimes maybe these ones interferes with all the size channel encodings, and also maybe sometimes the power of the plane might be lost because of these ones. So 3D versus 2D bar charts. Here I have given you an example for the three-dimensional bar chart and also kind of a two-dimensional bar chart as well. So 3D bar charts very difficult to justify actually. So if you see the first one with the question number 7, so here by using this by seeing on these 3D graphs anyway, you can't interpret much interpretations, or else you can't describe these visualizations as well. It's really hard to do kind of few interpretations. But if you use these two-dimensional ones, if you use these two-dimensional ones, so if you see on these two-dimensional charts, actually you can derive inferences, or else you can interpret on these charts very clearly. So the same scenario you can see like the most one, a maximum one, minimum one, likewise, or else if you want to likewise you can make any inferences on this one. But actually the 3D bars very difficult to justify, and perceptive distortion as well as occlusion might be occurs because of these through 3D bar charts. But for the 2D's one, pasting into through 2D almost always better choice. Maybe sometimes for the bar charts itself, it's better if we can use two-dimensional bar charts. So tilted text isn't legible. So if you see this network graph, again I have drawn a network graph here, but these network graph, actually these are kind of labeled one. We have text label on this, we have text labels on these nodes, but can we read these ones? Actually no. So we can't see these informations. So we can't see these actual labels, actual named labels. So it's really hard to read these text labels. So text legibility far worse when tilted from image plane. So for here I have mentioned few further readings as well, if you would like to read more and more, and also if you would like to investigate more on these data visualizations, you can go through with these papers and books, so that you can gain more knowledge on this data visualization itself. And no unjustified 3D example. So here a time series data is given as an example. If you see this time series data, can you derive any inferences on this chart itself? What do you think? No, right? Exactly. we can't derive, we can't see the proper, we can't see a proper visualization even. We can't read a proper visualization even. So extruded curves, detailed comparisons impossible. Anyway, we can't compare two or three multiple dimensions, and also we can't compare multiple data points as well here. So we can't see data clearly by using these type of 3D visualizations. So it's anyway, if you are doing kind of any visualizations, you have to have a good knowledge about where to use 3D, where to use 3D graphs, or where to use 3D charts, and where to use, when to use 2D charts, 2D graphs as well. So again, no unjustified 3D example transform for new data abstraction. Maybe sometimes, so you can, so derived data cluster hierarchy and juxtapose multiple views, calendar, superimposed 2D curves. So here, in the left hand side we have kind of a calendar. So this calendar might this is kind of a 1997. It has been mapped to a curved line chart, but anyway it's also incorrect, right? So here we have the, in the left hand side, here we have kind of an here we have kind of an calendar data, but on the left side we can't derive what we have in the left hand side. So again, it's a kind of an cluster hierarchy, but these transformations for new data abstraction also, if you do like that, anyway you have to consider, is it correct, the first, the data we had in the first layer, or data we had in the first time, is it so those inferences may, those ones will affected by the transformation කියලා. Anyway we have to consider. So this is not an actually දැන් මෙතන නම් ඒකලෝ derive කරලා තියෙන්නේ අපිට left hand side එකේ තියෙන ඒවායින්ම right hand side එකේ තියෙන values ඒ දෙක එකට check කරාට cluster and calendar based visualization of time series data. So again, so for this one also we can't like අපිට exactly කියන්න විදිහක් නැහැ මොන වගේ idea එකක්ද තියෙන්නේ කියලා අපිට generate අපිට inferences ගොඩනගා ගන්න අපිට තීරණය කරන්න අපේ data set එක ගැන මුකුත් visualizations ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න විදියකුත් නැහැ. ඒ visualizations කරාට මේකෙන් කියවෙන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා අපිට තේරුම් ගන්න ඇත්තටම ටිකක් අපහසුයි. So ඒ වගේ ඒවා අපිට මග ඇරලා visualizations කරන්න අපි පුරුදු වෙන්න ඕනේ. So justified 3D shape perception. සමහරක් වෙලාවට මේ visualizations වලදී අපි represent කරනවා ඒ data අදාළ shape එකකින්. So targets might be sometimes spatial data යටතේ we have to talk about the shapes as well. It will be kind of a benefit because at a glance people can understand what are we talking about, what are we referring about. So benefits outweigh costs when task is shape perception for 3D spatial data. Interactive navigation supports synthesis across many viewpoints as well. So justified 3D economic growth curve. Here we have an here I have drawn a 3D chart for the economic growth curve as well. Constrained navigation steps through carefully designed viewpoints. මෙහෙම තිබ්බට සමහරක් වෙලාවට මේ වගේ එකකට මෙතනිනුත් අපිට හරියටම derive කරගන්න විදිහක් නැහැ. Economic growth curve එක මොන වගේ curve එකක්ද කියලා. Though it is kind of an 3D chart. සමහර constraints තියෙනවා, limitations තියෙනවා අපිට consider කරන්න වෙන. කොහොම වුණත් අපි දැනගන්න ඕනේ, අපි තීරණය කරන්න ඕනේ මොන මොන context වලටද අපි 3D charts use කරන්නේ, and also මොන මොන context වලටද 2D charts most suitable වෙන්නේ කියලා. No unjustified 3D. 3D legitimate for true 3D spatial data actually අපිට මොන හරි planes තුනක යන data නම් අපිට represent කරන්න තියෙන එතන dimensions තුනක් තියෙනවා නම් consider වෙන yes that's better if we can use a 3D chart. 3D needs very careful justification for abstract data. අපිට ගොඩක් වෙලාවට use කරන abstract data වලට මේ 3D charts ගත්තොත් ඒවට හරිම careful justification එකක් අපිට අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. Enthusiasm in 1990s but now skepticism and be especially careful with 3D for point clouds or network. So මේ 3D charts ගත්තාම හැබැයි network charts වලටයි cloud charts වලටයි ගත්තාම 3D charts ගොඩක් වෙලාවට map වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වුණාට සමහරක් වෙලාවට අපි use කරනවා නම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට careful justifications ඕනේ අපි use කරන abstract data වලට. So no unjustified 2D. Consider whether network data requires 2D spatial layout. Benefits outweigh costs when topological structure or context important for task. So consider whether network data requires 2D spatial layout. So here I have given 2 points. First point is especially if reading text is central to task, and also arranging as network means lower information density and harder label lookup compared to text lists. So consider whether network data requires 2D spatial layout, especially if reading text is central to task, and also arranging as network means lower information density and harder label lookup compared to text lists as well. So here benefits outweigh cost when topological structure or context important for task. So be especially careful for search results, document collections and ontologies as well. So when it comes to no unjustified 2D targets. So the network data, we have the topologies and also we have the paths as well. So we have to consider these constraints. We have to consider these ones while we are doing 2D spatial layout, especially if reading text is central to task, and also arranging as network means lower information density and harder label lookup compared to text lists as well. So here the benefits outweigh costs when topological structure, context important for task. Be especially careful for search results, document collections and ontologies as well. I beat memory. So this is the ice beat memory. This is the second one. So the principle would be external cognition versus internal memory. We have to consider the external cognition versus the internal memory as well. Easy to compare by moving eyes between side by side views. අපිට අපේ එන view එකෙන් view එකට S දෙක කරකවලා S එහාට මෙහාට යවලා compare කරන්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙන්න ඕනේ. compare කරන්න පහසු වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඉගෙන ගන්නත් ඕනේ. මම ඒකයි ඉස්සෙල්ලා කිව්වේ. On the exam itself, you may given few questions to comment on few visualizations as well, and also harder to compare visible item to memory of what you saw. සමහරක් වෙලාවට අපිට මොලයට තේරුම් කරන්න අපහසු වෙන්න පුළුවන් ඇහෙන් දකින ඒවා. එතකොට අපේ visual අපි design කරන visuals උත් අපි exactly බලුවාම අපිට ඉක්මනට මොනවාද ඒවයින් කියවෙන්නේ කියලා අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒක තමයි හොඳ visualization එකක් වෙන්නේ. So implications for animations. So great for choreographed storytelling, great for choreographed story telling. So these are kind of a few implications for animations. අපි මොන වගේ දේවල් වලටද මේවා use කරන්නේ? Actually great for choreographed storytelling. Storytelling වලට ගොඩක් වැදගත්, and also great for transitions between two states, and also poor for many states with changes everywhere. So consider small multiples instead. Here I have two. Here I have one is for the literals and the other one is for the abstracts. When it comes to literals, we have to consider about the animations. If it is abstract, then we have to consider about small multiples, and also if the animations are there, show time with time, and for the abstracts, show time with space as well. Resolution beats immersion. Here the resolution maybe sometimes it beat the immersions as well. Immersion typically not helpful for abstract data. අපි කතා කරන abstract data වලට ගොඩක් වෙලාවට immersion කියලා කියන එක useful වෙන්නේවත් උදව් වෙන්නේවත් helpful වෙන්නේවත් නැහැ. Do not need sense of presence or stereoscopic three-dimensional, and also desktop also better for workflow integrations as well. සමහරක් වෙලාවට අපිට desktop එක use වෙනවා වඩා සුදුසු වෙන්න පුළුවන් අපේ workflow integrations වලට. Resolution much more important. සමහරක් වෙලාවට resolution කියලා කියන එක ගොඩක් වැදගත් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So pixels are the secret scarcet resource. අපි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට resolutions measure කරන්නේ pixels වලින්. And first wave, the virtual reality for abstract data, difficult to justify. And also for the second wave, we have augmented reality, and mixed reality as well has more promise. So these ones we have to like consider while we are doing visualizations. Overview first, zoom and filter details on demand. Influential mantra from this is kind of a book paper, actually IEEE paper, which you can refer while you are studying on these data visualizations. So here when it comes to query, as I can remember that I explained in the very first day, we have like first we have to identify the data points, and then we have to compare, and then we have to summarize. So anyway, the overview, the summary will be matters. So microscope of full visualization design is kind of a problem. Okay, so now we move to the rule of thumb. Yes, very first one is responsiveness is required. As you all know, if it is kind of an visualization, it's better to be and responsive visual. The responsiveness is kind of a must, and also responsiveness is required. So visual feedback through rough categories. Here we have I have mentioned three rough categories on visual feedback. One is spending 0.1 second, the other one is within 1 second, and the next one is 10 seconds. So if it is kind of a 0.1 second, 0 to 1 second, or 0.1 second, that is kind of perceptual processing. If it is 1 second, then immediate response. We call them as immediate response. If it is kind of a 10 second, then we call them as brief tasks. So 0 to 1 seconds, that is perceptual processing. Sub-second response for mouse over highlighting, that is for example, we can call it ballistic motion. And for a 1 second, that is kind of an immediate response, a fast response after mouse click. Mouse click क्या करना था वड़ा වඩා ටිකක් වැඩි වෙලාවක් ගන්නවා වෙන්න පුළුවන් response එකට. So button press fits low limits on motor control. That is kind of an example for that one. If it is 10 seconds, then that means a brief task. So bounded response after dialog box. So mental model of heavy weight operation file loads. So scalability considerations also there. There are like 4 scalability considerations which we have to consider. One is highlight selection without complete redraw of view. That is about the graphics front buffer. So and also we have to consider how to show our glass for multi-second operations as well. That is, we have to check for cancel or undos as well. And also we have to show progress bar for long operations, that is kind of an process in background thread. And also we have to consider about the rendering speed when item count is large. That one also we should guarantee the frame rate as well. So function first, form next. First one would be the function and the next one would be the form. Next one would be the formation. First one would be the anyway the function. So maybe sometimes the dangerous to start with the aesthetic, usually impossible to add function retroactively. Or I සිද්ධ වෙන්න අපිට functions add කරනවා නම් සමහරක් වෙලාවට ඒක ටිකක් අපහසු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. And also start with focus on functionalities as well. සමහරක් වෙලාවට අපි පටන් ගනිද්දී start කරද්දී start with focus on functionalities. අපි පටන් ගන්න ඕනේ, අපි පටන් අර ගන්න ඕනේ මොනවද මේකට අපි apply කරන, මොනවද මේකට අපි add කරන functionalities කියලා. So possible to improve aesthetics later on as refinement, and if no expertise in house, find good graphic designer to work with. And aesthetics maybe do matter. Another level of function, maybe sometimes visual hierarchies, alignments, flows, and also gestalt principles might be sometimes in action. These are kind of few things which we have to consider. So the dangerous to start with aesthetics. So usually අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් impossible to add functions. සමහරක් වෙලාවට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ගත්තොත් functions I වැඩ කරන්න අපි functions use කරනවා නම් එහෙම functions වැඩ කරන්න එහෙම functions අපිට වැඩ කරන්න තියෙන අපහසුව වැඩි. Usually impossible to add function retroactively. So start with focus on functionalities. Possible to improve aesthetics later on as refinement. පස්සේ අපිට improvements විදිහට කරනවා නම් සමහරක් වෙලාවට ඒක පහසු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. If no expertise in house, ඒ සම්බන්ධව හොඳට දැනුමක් තියෙන පුද්ගලයෙක් එතන නැත්නම්, if no expertise in house, find good graphic designer to work. සමහරක් වෙලාවට ඒ අදාළ කර්තව්‍යයේ expert කෙනෙක් එහෙම නැත්නම් good graphic designer කෙනෙක් වැඩේ කරනවා නම් ඒක වඩාත් හොඳ වෙනවා. And also aesthetics do matters, another level of function. So anyway, we have to consider the visual hierarchies, alignments, flows as well while we are doing these data visualizations. So form basic graphic design ideas as well. So here if you if you see this chart, what are the things you can see? So anyway, all these text boxes, all these texts are aligned in the middle, and there's no such groups, so there are a lot of white spaces. So these are kind of few things which you can directly see if you go through with this chart itself. So anyway, what are the things which we have to consider while we are doing these designs, graphic designs? So first one is we have to consider about the proximity, do group related items together, and also we have to and also we just need to try to avoid equal white spaces between unrelated. සමහරක් වෙලාවට අදාළ නැති තැන්වල තියෙන white spaces මේ තියෙන spaces අපිට avoid කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නත් ඕනේ. And also අපිට මේ තියෙන ඒවා එක ළඟ යන එකකට අදාළ points නම් තියෙන ඒවා එක ගොඩකට අරගෙන group කරලා mention කරන එක තමයි වඩා වැදගත් වෙන්නේ. So if you see the second chart, then you can see the topic is like එක තැනකට ඇවිල්ලා, and also they have removed those white spaces as well. එතකොට මේක section 3කට group කරලා තියෙනවා. first එක book එකේ නම, second එක අර subtitles වගේ තියෙන එක, at the last author ගේ නමයි කවදද මේක publish කරේ කියලා කියන එකයි තමයි එතනදී represent කරලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලෝ groups තුනකට ඒක කඩලා තියෙනවා ඇත්තටම. Yes, and also they have removed these visualizations. They have removed these white spaces as well. So alignments ගැන ගත්තහම දැන් තාම මේක alignments වලදී තියෙන්නේ do find or make strong lines, stick to it, and also we have to avoid automatic centering as well. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අපි කරද්දී center එකට තමයි align වෙන්නේ, but හොඳම දේ තමයි ඒ අදාළ දේට ගැලපෙන විදිහට align කරන එක. For example මෙතන align කරලා තියෙනවා right side එකට. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ට පේනවා ඇති අර මැද තිබ්බට වඩා පොඩි uniqueness එකක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා අපි දකුණු පැත්තට align කරද්දී. So repetition do unify by pushing existing consistencies as well. So here the repetition do unify by pushing existing consistencies as well. Yes, repetitions එකම දේ නැවත නැවත කියවෙනවා නම් ඒකත් අපි අයින් කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒකෙනුත් අපි වැළකෙන්න ඕනේ. සහ අදාළ නැති දේවල් කියවෙනවා නම් අවශ්‍ය නැති දේවල් කියවෙනවා නම් ඒවත් අපි ඉවත් කරන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට මේක fourth stage එකට improve කරපු cover page එකක් තමයි මේ තියෙන්නේ 4 වෙනියට. So contrast also there, if not identical then very different. සමහරක් වෙලාවට අපි කරන designs identical unique designs නෙවෙයි නම් සමහරක් වෙලාවට ඒවට තියෙන පිළිගැනීම මිනිස්සු ඒව දිහා බලන ඒවා ගොඩක් attractive වෙන්නෙත් නැහැ. මිනිස්සුට ඒක මතක හිටින්නෙත් නැහැ. and කිසිම different එකක් ඒ කියන්නේ කිසිම වෙනසක් අපිට දකින්න හම්බ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට unique designs කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් තමයි ඒක මිනිසුන්ගේ මතකයේ රැඳෙන්නේ. Avoid not quite the same. සමහරක් වෙලාවට එකම වගේ නැතුව සමානකම් නැතුව වෙනස් දෙයක් represent කරන්න තියෙනවා නම් වෙනස් දෙයක් design කරන්න තියෙනවා නම් ඒක ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අපිට වැදගත් වෙනවා. So here the final cover page would be like this. So first we started from the first one. See the difference of these ones. Last one. So yes. අපි පළවෙනියට තියෙන එක නිකාම නිකන් එකක් හැමෝම use කරන වගේ එකක්, but for the fifth one ඒක ටිකක් වෙනස් එකක්. අපිට බලපු ගමන් ටක් ගාලා ගැටෙනවා, ඒ වගේම අපිට මතකත් හිටිනවා. So again here I have mentioned kind of few things which you have to read. A few things means actually you can read and gain more knowledge on these ones. Okay, so for the last few slides, so the best practices, that is labeling. අපි කරන දේ මොකක්ද, අපි කියවෙන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා කියන එක label කරන එක best practice එකක් විදිහට තමයි සලකන්නේ. Make visualizations as self documenting as possible. සමහරක් වෙලාවට ඒගොල්ලෝ advice කරනවා අපේ improvement එකක් විදිහටත් එහෙම නැත්නම් අපේ documenting විදිහටත් අපි develop කරන visualizations වලත් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අපිට meaningful and useful title labels legends අපිට use කරනවා නම් වඩා වටිනවා වැදගත් ඒ වගේම context එකට ගැලපෙන විදිහට ඒ labels use කරනවා නම් titles use කරනවා නම් ඒක ගොඩක් වැදගත් වෙනවා. And first point would be access and panes. Sub windows should have labels. For the second one, everything that's plotted should have a legend as well. So for the access and panes, sub windows should have labels, and access should have good mix or max boundary tick marks as well. So everything that's plotted should have a legend and own header labels if not redundant with main title as well. Use reasonable numerical formats as well. Sometimes සමහරක් වෙලාවට මේවා ඇවිල්ලා best practices. අපිට rules විදිහට consider කරන්න බෑ. හැබැයි අපි සැලකුවොත් හොඳයි කියලා කියන්නේ අපි කළොත් හොඳයි කියලා කියන්නේ අන්න ඒ වගේ criterias තමයි අපි මේවට කියන්නේ. Meaningful and useful title, labels, legends, access and panes, sub windows should have labels, and everything that's plotted should have a legend and use reasonable numerical formats as well. Okay, so that's all about the lecture. That's all about the today's lecture. So rules of thumb summary: no unjustified 3D. We have to consider power of the plane. and disparity of the depth, and occlusion hides information, maybe sometimes perceptive distortion dangers, tilted text isn't legible, and also no unjustified 2D, that is eyes beat memory resolution over immersion, overview first, zoom and filter, details or demand, and responsiveness is required, and function first, and form nest. So these are kind of few things which we discussed in the in this lecture, that is on the lecture 6. So if you have any questions, you can send those questions to me via the chats, and also if you can start kind of an Q&A session, or else a kind of an forum, so that I also can answer, reply to these questions while when I'm free. So anyway, you can contact me. So I'm available on the department as well, in the department Tuesdays to Thursdays. So yes, you can come and meet me as well. So if you have any questions, so please participate to the practicals. You are having Power BI practicals. Um, so you have given kind of one time slot, so that you have to participate on that time slot itself. Okay, so maybe sometimes you might have an a practical exam as well, as the final exam. I'll be giving few marks for that one as well, and also a written test as well. Okay, if you so please join for the practical classes, and also uh, just go through with these lecture notes, and also go through with this lecture as well, and also read these research papers, references research papers, as supportive articles. Okay, thank you so much for listening. See you on uh, catch you all on lecture 7.